This is Rita Dairit, and this is Buhay Parang Life, where we discuss issues about this thing called life. Thank you, my dear viewers, for tuning into this episode. I invite you to please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and Facebook page. And also to write down your comments and suggestions below. Buhay Parang Life is part of Faith Watch TV, and I invite you to download the Faith Watch app on your mobile device. And I am just very honored to have the perfect guest for this episode. She is the president of the Philippine Nurses Association of Nevada and recently awarded Fil-am Woman of the Year. My pleasure and honor to present to you Miss Elizabeth de Leon-Gamboa. Lisa, welcome to Buhay Parang Life.
Hi, Rita. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure, Lisa. Alam ko, you are very busy. So we go direct to inspiring our viewers. Alam mo, Lisa, ang Faith Watch TV has over 230,000 subscribers all over the world. And I'm sure that, wow, you are such an influencer, a woman who inspires. Lisa, kailan ka ba nag-migrate sa Amerika?
Wow, that was eons ago, I would say. That was in 1992 when I came to the United States.
So over 30 years this year.
Yep.
30 years this year. Because you are a nurse, a medical practitioner. So was that your kumbaga passport to the US?
Actually, I would say yes and no. I came here to the United States petitioned by my parents, not through a work visa. So I was fortunate in that realm that I didn't have to go through placement through an agency. I came being petitioned by my parents.
Also, it was easier for you because when you entered the US, nandun na yung pamilya mo, nandun ang parents mo?
Yes, actually, I had my sisters here already. And then my parents, though, stayed in the Philippines, but they gave us the opportunity to live here.
All right. So share with us, Lisa, your journey as an immigrant to the US when you first landed in the US. Dalaga ka pa nun?
Yes.
Okay.
At first, I really didn't want to leave the Philippines. I actually had a broken heart leaving the Philippines because I had to leave somebody behind. Huh?
Oh, ayaw mo sana because you had somebody behind.
Yes.
Paano kasi nail-stalk ng parents mo at ng mga kapatid mo? Halika na, pumunta ka na sa Amerika. Iwan mo yan.
Yeah, actually, they told me, to be honest with you, I was in pre-law. And then when they said that I was going to eventually migrate here to the States, they told me to shift to nursing. So that's how my journey started. So, okay, nursing, because that's where the need is, and I will have a stable job here in the United States. So despite my objections, I had to fly and leave somebody behind. So it was very stressful. I wasn't happy, wasn't looking forward to a greener pasture because I wanted to stay back home, right?
Okay.
And then with that being said, it was not an easy journey because it was actually a culture shock. I had to learn the values. I had to learn the living standards. I had to assimilate, I would say. So I was not really happy at first.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very depressing. I had to leave my work, my friends, and all that. So I had to start from scratch here in the United States.
But
didn't have any friends.
Na-pick up ko yun, Lisa. Cultural differences, you had to assimilate. You landed, where did you land?
California.
Oh, well, California, in LA?
Mm-hmm.
So
no, first in Daly City, close to San Francisco.
In San Francisco side. Okay, so basically, San Francisco, Daly City, California is kind of maraming Filipino, but still, na-depress ka pa rin, na may culture shock pa rin?
Meron pa rin.
Meron
Yeah,
pa rin?
definitely. Kasi although there are a lot of Filipinos doon sa nursing facility where I started, meron ding iba-ibang cultures. You have uh, how would I put this? Caucasians, meron ding African Americans. It's actually a melting pot, right?
Right.
If you would say in California. So I had to adjust to all those different cultures as well. Pati yung diction, yung kanilang accent,
Yes.
the way I pronounce medications back home were different. Dito, kunwari, tumawag ako ng doktor, I was asking for a cough medicine, and how I pronounce it in the Philippines was Robitussin. That's how we were trained. And the doctor kept asking me, because that was around nighttime, well, what are you saying? I can't understand you. So I said, it's for cough, that my patient is coughing. I need a cough syrup. And he just laughed at me and said, oh, it should be Robitussin. I'm like,
Robitussin.
oh, okay.
Mm.
So yung simple things like that.
I know. What else?
Yeah. Tapos, yung kanilang culture na they're kind of cliquish, I would say. Dahil bago ako, I was young and I'm from a foreign land. Parang, okay, sizing me up. Does this kid really know anything? Yeah, I did.
All right. So how did you cope?
Oh, it was a lot of crying. As soon as I clocked out, I would cry to the bus station. I'm like, I just want to go back home.
What kept you in the US? You could have gone back
Yes.
home.
Of course. Ngayon, every time that I go home, my sister, Karina, I lived with her when I was in LA, and she would always tell me, just take it one day at a time. You're not going to know everything all at one time. You just have to pace yourself and be kind to yourself. I mean, you can make mistakes here and there, but as long as you learn from those mistakes, then you'll be fine. And then she would tell, she's also a nurse, so she would tell me her stories, her own journey, when she first came to the States.
So
and that kept me going.
When did you know that you were already okay?
I would say maybe a year or two. I went back home after 1 year, but things didn't work out. So I said, okay, I really have to face my new life here in the States.
When you say things didn't work out, are you referring to the long distance relationship?
Oh my Lord.
You don't have to answer that.
It's a confession, yes.
Okay, so it was not the same when you left.
It was not the same.
All right. So,
and I just had to make a commitment to make my life here in the United States work for me.
And then when did you move to Nevada?
Nevada, I moved in 1997.
And so you are Fil-am Woman of the Year. Tell us, what does it take to be a Woman of the Year? What have you shared with our viewers, what you have done for our Kababayan nurses?
Nako, it was very humbling to be nominated and then eventually win this Fil-am Woman of the Year. I was like, okay, what have I done to really deserve this, right? As a nurse for 30 years, I've always had in my head, I'm here to serve mankind. Although it was not my first choice, I've learned to love it because my hands and my heart, these are the things that I need to really touch one life at a time. So when I have seen my patients improve, and then, like, for example, after stroke or a broken bone, etc., and then when I see them get discharged and you have thank yous from family members and my patients, it's very fulfilling. And now through the years, those have kept me going despite the aching legs and my sore back. Um, I would say it's very gratifying to be of service. Now, I'm not in the front lines anymore. I'm working for managed care. I'm working in the office as a quality nurse. And I'm I would say I'm serving vicariously, because when I see my case managers and they're trying to do the best they can to have good patient outcomes, and if I can influence them to really focus on the patients and give their best, then that really serves my purpose. Then the other, out of work, I'm serving also the community and the nurses here in Nevada as the president of the Philippine Nurses Association. So, in that way, when I feel that I'm able to impart my knowledge and promote the health and well being of our Nevada nurses, especially our members, then I'm equipping them with tools to be able to serve their patients and at the same time taking care of themselves.
Wow.
So it's like serving, paying it forward as well through the nurses that I work with and who I serve.
So you can now, after 30 years, honestly say that you are fully assimilated in the American way of living.
Well, that's the thing. When they say assimilate, like you blend in.
You
But
blend
for
in.
me, I've learned through the years, it's not just a matter of blending in and taking in the life that I have here in the States, but I can still be the unique Filipino woman that I am and still shine. I don't have to lose myself and my identity as a Filipina, but I can thrive. Parang makikipagsabayan ka, without losing yourself.
The Filipino nurse has been celebrated all over the world, especially during the pandemic. I mean, all over the world, really the Filipino nurse continues to shine. What makes kasali na ako nun, what makes the Filipino woman or nurse, medical worker shine during the time of the pandemic?
Wow. Actually, that's a very good question, because the year 2020 was celebrated by the World Health Organization, right? As the year of the nurse.
Year of the nurse.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So they have really focused their attention to the nurses that are in the front lines. Because when the family members could not see their patients, they could not visit their families, right? Because of the COVID restrictions, who were there to really hold the hand of these patients, to listen to them and be with them during their dying phase? It was the nurses. And all over the world, right? We have so many Filipino nurses serving. And what makes a Filipino nurse different or survive through all these challenges of the pandemic? Number one is faith. Okay, it's ingrained in our heads, and from the time that you're young, yung faith in God talaga, number one yan. That you can weather any storm with your faith in God. Pangalawa is that being family oriented. Okay, now this is difficult times. I have to work overtime. I'm stressed out because I'm afraid I'm going to contract the infection. Right. But I'm doing this for my family. I have to earn a living. Sometimes the Filipinos, nurses that I know of, nagpapadala pa yan sa Philippines, right? Because they have families to take care of. So yan, they're very family oriented. And then, of course, the other thing is they have that patience and resilience. Kahit ano ang storm na dumating, they really just get up, dust themselves off, and charge again and do it again, all over again, every single day. So, yun talaga ang quality ng Filipino nurse. And of course, aside from that, we really have good training. Sa nursing schools, we're trained in English, right? We use textbooks in English. So when they come here to the States, they're ready to go. They're ready to perform the skills that they've learned in school. And we have really good training ground because of the clinical experience that we have in the hospitals. Unlike here in the United States, sometimes they have limitations in their clinicals. They have yung mga they have like modules, they have their parang clinical area nila where they have mannequins, simulations and stuff. While in the Philippines, it's actual people that we take care of
So you are
during our clinicals.
saying we have better training in the Philippines rather than here in the US?
I would say though, of course I'm very partial, right? Kasi sa amin, when I was training, we have been exposed to the teaching hospital. I was a student nurse and performing my clinical rotations sa PGH. So marami talagang pasyente. You go to different wards, ortho, you have labor and delivery and all that. So we did have many clinical hours. Even community nursing, we would go to all these various barrios and integration. Here, they would have some clinical rotations, but if I compare it to what we have, I don't think it's as many hours that they have compared to ours.
Wow, these are amazing. So what are the challenges that you and your colleagues faced during the pandemic, and how did you help them? Kasi by 2020, medyo veteran ka na dyan. And I can imagine you, a lot of newcomers, yung mga bago pa lang sa Amerika, they would come to you. Ano yung challenges nila and how did you help them?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And I was really very fortunate and blessed to be a part of this great organization, the Philippine Nurses Association, because through our organization, we were able to touch so many lives, not just our fellow nurses. I'm going to brag a little bit about our
Sure, go ahead.
programs, what we have done for the past 2 years. So we have this masks on, shields up, protecting Nevada together. We have come up with that in collaboration with various agencies, like, for example, NAFA. It's the National Federation of Filipino Organizations or Associations. They started this. They were providing PPEs, and that would be masks and face shields because of the shortage at that time in the early 2020s, right? So after a few months, they said, okay, we're done with this project. But PNA and V felt that there was still that continued need. So we hopped on and said, we will continue this project. And to date, we have given about 3,800 masks and shields combined. So not only to the acute hospitals, nursing homes, group homes, but even to the public, yung mga teachers, and then people from churches. And then we attended all these community outreach programs. And our board of directors were sewing masks. We were assembling these face shields out of transparencies, and then yung pool noodles. So yeah, I mean, they were not like hospital grade, but when you're short of PPE, at least we protected our nurses, at least with something. So that was one. And then we had this Give to Nurses campaign. We had a massage business that had collected all these certificates that were not being used. Of course, with the social distancing and everything, right? They were not going to the shops. So they donated about 1,400 of these certificates, which we donated to all the nurses, the frontline nurses who were taking care of COVID patients. So it was a treat for relaxation for all of them, right? Having long hours, 12 hours, and then sometimes with the mandatory overtime, they needed a break to do some self-care. And then we initiated the PNA and the prayer group. Kasi some of our co-workers and some of our friends were slowly getting infected by the virus, and some of them even passed away. Umaba na yung listahan that we were praying for. Yeah. And then some of them have told friends of friends that were praying for them. So yun, they reach out to us when they needed prayers. And it was also a source of comfort for our members who were involved in that. Tapos we also had the gifts of sharing. At first, it was just geared towards the nurses that had COVID afflicted families. So we collaborated with another agency and a church group that opened their food pantry to us. So una, mga a few meals here and there. And then, of course, they learned about it, some other neighbors, and then it extended, you know. And again, when people heard that what we're doing, then they started donating. We had doctors, we had nurses, and we had other friends who were donating money or goods to be given away. And we really focused on that during the holidays. Kasi malungkot na nga dahil namatayan or nagkasakit. So at least a holiday meal, like a turkey and pies and whatnot, that went a long way. And then, of course, aside from all those, we have focused this year and the past, yung mentorship program. You ask, oh, okay, I'm already seasoned. How about the rest who are new to the profession, right? So we established this mentorship program. Yung mga novice nurses were paired with seasoned nurses. And then we go through the Jean Watson's Caritas processes. Every week, they do a Zoom like this. And then they talk about what are the ways that we can cope, what are the things that we can do to not just care for our patients, but also start with self-care, making sure that your cup is full because you cannot give from an empty cup, right?
Yes.
So yun. Tapos, and then we also collaborated with another professional agency. They got a grant. It's called For a Mind, Body Strong. It's a self-care course. So we started giving that as well to our nurses because it's very difficult when you're subjected to stress every day. And then nobody is trying to help you cope.
Right.
And sometimes nurses were afraid to ask for help because we think, oh, I don't want them to think I'm weak or I'm depressed or whatnot. But we've encouraged our nurses, to ask for help because that is a sign of strength. And when you get help and when you get your peers around you, then they'd be able to bring out the best in you instead of looking at the negative thing in the challenge.
Aside from pandemic-related challenges, what other challenges do you face as a Filipino nurse in the US?
Well, actually, going back to my early days as a nurse, as I said earlier, parang I had to assimilate, right? I had to do what everybody was doing because otherwise I don't want to be an outcast.
Right.
There was a point in time that I was even told by a patient here and there, oh, just go back where you came from. You don't know anything. But then after that, once they got to know me and have seen how well I've taken care of them, or how competent I was, equally competent I was, because I wouldn't have passed the nursing boards, right? If I didn't know what I was doing, right? So eventually they came around and said, oh, my nurse, my very good nurse from the Philippines, right? However, due to the pandemic, I would still say it's still related to the pandemic, although it's not really gone away. Let's face it, racism will always be here, right? It's still very evident, maybe not in blatant ways, but in subtle ways, you can still feel it. It's still happening, but more so, there was a heightened anti-Asian hate or violence because of the pandemic. Yes. And unfortunately, when they say Asians, they're not just talking about the Chinese, right? Kasi magkakamukha naman tayo lahat, right? Mga singkit, ganyan.
Yung ating mga
And
sikit sa
then,
mata.
oh. So now, of course, in the hospital setting, they would not blatantly call you out and say, "Oh, you're a Filipina. I don't want you taking care of me." Although I've heard some instances, some patients still,
Still see
voice
that?
that opinion. And very few, but it's still evident. But my fear is outside of the hospital walls. Kasi sa hospital, we have a protection here in Nevada that uh, it the crime can be prosecuted if it's committed against a healthcare
Yeah.
worker. Yung battery, right? That's physical violence. But words, we just let it roll off our shoulders. But yung outside, that's the one that I was most fearful of, because if people are getting kicked and beaten and spot on sa
Right.
mga subways or sa bridge, or even while waiting for a ride and whatnot, with no provocation, that was my fear, because when my kids are out there, or even when I'm out there, they don't know if I'm a nurse or not. So I'm just as Asian as anybody, right?
Right.
And there was even one time we were gassing up when we were to visit my son in northern Nevada. We were actually told to go back where we came from, and we were just merely gassing up. We didn't want to engage or anything, but to hear a sly remark like that, it still happens.
What about professionally? Is there still racism? Although considering, I can imagine that in your hospital, baka majority ang Filipino dyan, hindi?
Yes, actually, sa mga hospitals and nursing homes, every clinical setting, majority, I would say, are
Filipino.
Filipinos. Wala kang mapupuntahan na hospital setting na walang Pilipino. If you would say, kunwari, are you pertaining to like co-workers, if there's
Right, right.
racism
Meron
among
pa ba?
co-workers? Um, I would say maybe not obvious, or hindi masyadong obvious yung racism.
Right.
They would not attack you personally or whatnot, but maybe they would have preferences.
Oh,
Yung ganun ba? When you compare a Filipino young nurse that is aspiring to be a leader, and then you have somebody that is maybe yung for dito na born, or
right.
Caucasian,
Okay.
if you put them side by side, there may be a possibility for preference. I would not insinuate that it's racism, but maybe preference. And tayo, most of the time, we can express ourselves, but maybe we still retain some of our accent compared to somebody that's born here that
Right.
just speaks fluently. So that could also be a factor that we don't know if that's what they use to gauge who will best qualify for a leadership position.
The whole world is in need of medical workers, nurses, caregivers, and the whole world is looking at the Philippines to provide this. What would you advise, first of all, to families, because you were studying pre-law but took up nursing to, for in preparation for your migration. So what would you advise families, or young people who are in other courses but is right now being told by their parents, take up nursing because
Mhm.
that is what is needed in the world, so you can have a better life in the
Better
mind of the
life.
Filipino, right? So anong
Yeah.
ma-advise mo dun? Yung
Okay.
magpapalit ng course to take up nursing.
Oh. Well, speaking from my experience, of course, no hard feelings, no blaming or anything, because at first, if even it was not my first choice, right now I feel that it was my calling. And God was so good to use my parents to lead me where I need to be. Now, of course, sa ibang mga bata dyan,
Mhm.
that they're being told by their parents, oh, mag-nursing ka so you would have a better future, a greener pasture. you have to find it in yourself. You have to be true to yourself, what you really want to be. Because there are some instances where you would follow what your parents want you to do, but then you're not happy. Deep inside, it's not for you. So you have to make that determination. Only you can tell yourself how you're going to be happy and how you're going to live your life, right? But now, once you've done something, then you need to be able to commit to it, you know, um, and just give it your best shot. Because if you, for example, took up nursing and you still have it in your mind, I really don't want to be a nurse. I don't really want to be a nurse. How can you be successful if you're resenting that? You have to give yourself that shot to make it work for you, to give your best. But if you already have given your best and it's still not good enough, it's really not meant to be, then you find your way to your true happiness. And yeah, and right now I would say it's still not the end of the world. Okay, so after 30 years as a nurse, I'm still advocating. I may not be a lawyer, but I'm still advocating. And that was the main thing why I wanted to be a lawyer, to advocate for others. And I can do it now in a different way.
Now, your advice to those who are preparing to migrate to the US as a nurse, is there to, this American dream? Is there really an American dream? And what would you advise to those who are preparing to move to the US as nurses, as medical workers?
Mm-mm. There is an American dream, okay? But you have to work hard. It won't be given to you in a silver platter. Hindi siya madali. You have to commit to it. Kasi nga, yun, pagdating mo dito, you're in a foreign land, right? You have to follow their rules. The things na nakaugalian mo back home may not necessarily apply here. And then you have to adjust to the work setting. You have to adjust to the people around you at work. And it's a grocery, sa mga daan, yung hindi na pwede yung 5 streets, I mean 5 lanes sa two lane traffic, right?
Right.
Because di ba sa atin sa Pilipinas, when you're in a hurry, you sing it here. Now, dito sa Amerika, talaga, you have to follow the laws. You have to also know your rights as a citizen or even as an immigrant. When you come here, before you even come here, look at your contracts. Kasi pag hindi mo alam what's expected of you, ano ang deliverables mo, and what your rights are as a contracted worker, then how would you be able to advocate for yourself kung hindi mo alam in black and white? So you have to also find resources. You have to learn. You have to research para pagka mayroong situation that may be a gray area, you'd be able to find that right answer and not cross that line. And then always stay true to yourself. You don't have to be somebody else to be happy here in the United States. Yes, there is an American dream. We kapag nagtrabaho ka, or if you really are patient and you really strive to become a better person and a better nurse, and things will all line up into place.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Miss Elizabeth de Leon-Gamboa. Thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing your experiences, your insights, and your wisdom to our viewers. And thank you, my dear viewers, for watching this episode. This is Rita Dairit reminding you today, haba-habaan po ang pasensya sapagkat ang buhay parang life.